Hello everyone, my name is Jimin Kim and I'm currently a junior at Suzhou Singapore International School in Suzhou, China. The paper I'll be presenting today is called Misogyny and Gender Conflicts in South Korea, and I hope to shed light on the complex issues that affect women's lives in this society. Before delving into the issue, I would like to begin by sharing a personal story that many Korean females may relate to. As I'm half Korean myself, every Lunar New Year, my family and I would travel to my grandparents' house to celebrate this annual festival. It was always a joyful time, filled with laughter and delicious food and family gatherings. But while my mother and aunts were busy in the kitchen preparing the meals, my father and uncles would just relax, waiting for the food to be served. It wasn't until recently that I began to see these subtle inequalities for what they were. There was no overt abuse or anyone being excluded from the table, but what I witnessed for many, many years was a quiet reinforcement of gender norms. While many might associate misogyny with actions like explicit violence or discrimination, these subtle dynamics often escape attention, quietly influencing everyday interactions. And hence, from these small, seemingly innocuous moments in family gatherings to more significant disparities in the society at large, one can easily spot that gender inequality is woven into the fabric of Korean society. As we move forward, I'll be exploring various facets of this issue as presented in the study, including cultural and historical expectations, then the manifestations of misogyny, and finally, the effects they have and how these manifestations reflect on the fertility rates of the country. Now, let's begin by diving into the cultural and historical roots that underpin these gender norms. But here, I would first like to share a famous quote by South Korean contemporary poet Sung Kim. In Korea, a woman must first obey her father, then her husband when she becomes an ajumma, and finally obey her son as a harmony. Any woman who violates or lives outside of these roles is called a changnyo. Now, to define a few key terms for non-Korean speakers, the ajumma refers to middle-aged women who are relegated to the role of the dutiful mother, while the harmony refers to older women who are expected to fulfill the role of the grandmother. Any women that fail to fulfill the societal expectations are relegated to the changnyo, or the prostitute. Now, just to clarify, not all men subscribe to these beliefs, and many are, of course, actively working towards change. I'm not trying to generalize all men here. But still, while these perspectives may seem exaggerated today, it reflects lingering gender norms within South Korean society. And from this, we can see that the Confucian focus on filial piety, or the virtue of reverent obedience to one's parents and elders, has significantly shaped the roles of women in Korean culture and imposing rigid expectations based on their life stages. And patriarchy was created as a result of the Confucianist values, and patriarchy is essentially a system where male authority is prioritized and women's roles are rigidly defined, just like how in Korean society, women are expected to obey their fathers, husbands, and sons, reinforcing a cycle of subservience. And other than Confucianism and patriarchy, the complex socioeconomic dynamics in South Korea also significantly affected gender equality, as although rapid industrialization from the late 20th century opened more job opportunities for women, there were still deep-rooted patriarchal attitudes that have persisted throughout and have heavily limited and even prevented the growth of women's rights. Furthermore, the election of President Yoon Suk-yeol in 2022 further complicated progress as he downplayed structural gender inequality and appealed to young men who feel discriminated against by feminism. And as a result, despite South Korea's economic success, it still ranks poorly on global gender equality scales, dropping to 105th in the 2023 World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report. And now we're moving on to the real-world manifestations of misogyny and other gender conflicts. And firstly, in South Korea, workplace discrimination and the gender pay gap remains pervasive issues. A recent survey revealed that women face inappropriate comments and sexism 3 to 4 times more often than men. For instance, around 55% of women reported being addressed with inappropriate terms, and around the same percentage of women reported that they have heard sexist remarks from their colleagues. The pay gap is also stark, with South Korean women earning nearly one-third less than their male counterparts, making it the widest among OECD countries, and OECD here just meaning the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. These findings highlight not just individual instances of discrimination, but a systemic issue that undermined women's contributions and potentials in the workforce. And outside of the workplace, the objectification and sexualization of women has taken alarming new forms, driven by technology and online platforms that facilitate exploitation. A prime example is the notorious Nth Room case, which operated from 2018 to 2020. This online sex trafficking ring coerced hundreds of women, including even minors, into producing explicit content against their will. Another significant case is the Burning Sun scandal, which began in 2018 at a nightclub co-owned by famous K-pop star Seungri. Allegations surfaced regarding illegal activities, including drug distribution, sexual assault, and the use of hidden cameras to film female patrons. The leaked chat messages among influential individuals displayed a shocking level of misogyny, almost dehumanizing victims with derogatory comments. And both scandals highlight a broader societal issue. Women are often viewed as disposable objects, their dignity disregarded in the pursuit of male gratification. Now, all of the factors and manifestations above have had profound implications for the country's fertility rates. For 3 consecutive years, South Korea has recorded the lowest fertility rate globally, but President Yoon Suk-yeol controversially blamed feminism for these trends, overlooking that gender equality is absolutely essential to addressing birth rate declines. Despite over $210 billion spent on initiatives to encourage childbirth, persistent inequalities remain, with women often burdened by both domestic responsibilities and workplace pressures. On the other hand, sociologists and feminists are advocating for a more feminist approach, emphasizing the need for enforcing anti-discrimination laws, sharing childcare duties, and supporting non-traditional family structures. Countries like Sweden and France, for example, have already stabilized their birth rates with equitable policies, contrasting sharply with South Korea's alarming decline. With predictions that the population could halve by the end of the century, urgent action is critical as the survival of the nation is practically on stake. But to conclude, it's striking to reflect on how, despite South Korea's impressive strides in economy and its technology, deeply rooted misogyny and gender conflicts continue to endure. These issues are not just abstract concepts. They're often very, very implicitly woven into everyday experiences of many, many people, including even my own. Yet, amidst this challenging landscape, we can find hope in the growing strength of feminist movements that are emerging to confront these injustices. It's extremely inspiring to see individuals and communities rallying together, challenging outdated norms and advocating for change. I believe that for South Korea to truly move forward, we must confront these entrenched values directly, making space for genuine equality through collective action. And of course, it's going to be a daunting task, but I'm optimistic that together we can create a future where equality is not just an ideal, but a lived reality for all. Thank you for listening.